this gentleman on Instagram, I have forgotten his name, but I will look for it and try and add it to the comments, where he is explaining how articulating mental conditions that we have in our vernacular or our native languages makes all the difference in helping the people around us understand. And on social media, there have been so many jokes about how African parents will make fun of your condition, your mental condition, especially things like depression and anxiety, for example, where after, let's say, a therapy session with a trained therapist or psychologist or psychiatrist, I don't know which term is more appropriate, when you get home, you are sort of chastised for explaining or just being vulnerable and saying how you are feeling or how you're being made to feel by maybe the people who are in the room with you. And I think for the longest time, this mental health conversation in the African community has been such a joke and such a punchline, which is so unfortunate. However, I do like or appreciate this man's content because he looks very I need to find the right word. He looks very masculine, very stereotypically masculine. But he's openly speaking about his conversations or his experiences with the therapist and how to better explain ourselves. This is where I got this part from. And it's so healthy and so wholesome that men are being open with that and showing that you can still be very masculine and very strong and still go and speak to a therapist. It doesn't make you any less of a man to go and seek help for your mental issues. If anything, it even makes you more manly because it means you're able to tackle all the aspects of being a human being, the physical, the mental, and the emotional as well, which makes you a more rounded human being. But all of this to say, I'd like to talk about mental health and specifically having a dog as therapy. So 6 years ago now, I got myself a dog, a Maltese poodle. I will put a picture somewhere on the screen when I eventually get to editing. And I got this dog because at that time I was really going through a lot when it came to my mental health. And I had been in therapy for some time. And I spoke to my therapist who said, look, I actually made a joke in passing and said it would be nice to have a dog. And then she actually said, I think a dog would be great for you. It would help you. I didn't understand what she meant, but I was just like, okay, whatever. Then there was a time when I was struggling to get out of bed. I was just sleeping. I slept for a very long time. I won't get into those details. But when I was sort of coming out of that deep or dark space, I then had a hunch, let me get a dog. And now's the time to get a dog. And I found a dog, and I went to get the dog. So I guess this is me now sharing my experience of having a dog in the midst of all of those challenges that I was experiencing. So why did I get a dog? I got a dog because I was struggling mentally, and it was a good distraction because I was living alone at the time, and I didn't need it, I guess, but it helped having something else outside of myself to take care of. So sometimes when you're going through something that is intense and that's the only thing you can focus on, even though the challenge is a valid challenge, it starts to feel a lot bigger, or it grows exponentially in your head more than what it is in reality, because that's the only thing you're focusing on. However, if you are distracted and you have other things to take care of, for those brief moments, you are taken away from whatever challenge that you're experiencing. And then when you come back to whatever you're dealing with, it doesn't feel so intense. So that is why I got a dog. And then how I got the dog, I think there are laws around selling or buying and selling of animals, and so it's sort of handled like incognito. So friends of mine who had dogs sort of connected me with a breeder, but I don't know where that breeder was. After I bought my dog, he just sort of disappeared, and I went to buy. I reached out to this breeder, and I was like, look, I see you have this dog available. I specifically wanted the breed that I got, Chandler's breed, which is Maltese, a Maltese poodle, because it's cute. I mean, look at him. He's cute. He's cute. But then I did realize that getting a dog is a lot of responsibility. And so as I share, I hope it will help you make a decision on whether or not you should get a dog. So I got him because he's cute, and that was it. So I obviously paid the breeder, but then now there are costs associated with having a dog. Yes, there is food that would expect, but there are also medical costs. So soon after getting Chandler, he got the parvovirus, which is quite deadly to dogs, and he was hospitalized for quite some time. And when they admitted him, they told me that he might not make it. It's really bad. And so I sort of made peace with parting with Chandler. But at that time, I also didn't have the emotional capacity to deal with such a loss. But he made it. I'll post a picture of the day that he was discharged. He looked a bit manic. He had gone through a lot as well. But then those are some of the costs that can come with the dog, because now he didn't have pet insurance or anything like that. And so I had to pay for that hospital stay in cash. And then I was able to then get pet insurance for him, which has really helped out a lot when it comes to my finances. So that's something to definitely consider. And also to know the issues that come with the breed. So some breeds will have more, they have personalities, right? But certain breeds are more prone to certain things or lean towards a particular personality. And with Chandler's breed specifically, they have gut issues. And so most of the time when he's going to the vet and it's not for his shots, it's about something with his tummy most of the time. And so now after 6 years, I now know how to sort of manage that and take care of that and be more proactive about his gut issues and be more aware of things that could trigger gut issues and diarrhea. And because he's a house dog, you obviously don't want your dog having diarrhea, because when you wake up in the morning and then there's stuff all over the house, it's like, oh, now you have to clean that up. It's not great. So that's another thing to consider. So that's the medical stuff and the food. And because he has gut issues, he has to get a specific type of food, which is a bit more pricey than the supermarket dog food that you'd find. So you'd have to get it at specialized pet stores, because it's not in any supermarket, or at the vet. And it's a little bit over the normal price. So that's another thing to consider with the dog that you decide to get. And then if you are going to travel, you always have to consider the dog's accommodation. So if someone's going to take care of the dog, the payment of the dog, or is it going to a dog hotel or boarding, that's something that you always have to consider when you're traveling, because the dog needs to be kept somewhere. They need to be walked. And then obviously there's the bed that the dog needs, just general things to make them comfortable and to entertain them. They have toys. I personally don't do high-end beds or toys, because Chandler has a habit of violating his bed, if I can put it that way. And so he then rips it up and violates it. And so if I'm buying high-end beds, it would just cost too much, and I'm not willing to pay that much. Yeah, so those are the things to be aware of. However, there is a big upside with having a dog. Like I mentioned before, when I was going through the most, I was struggling to wake up, and so because I had trained Chandler, it took me about 2 weeks to train him, to house train him regarding relieving himself in the house. He would make such a fuss to go outside, and that would force me to wake up and open the doors for him to go outside. And that was actually so helpful for me at the point where I was, because now after you see the sun, you can't then go back and sleep for the whole day. For example, now you're awake, now you might be feeling a bit down, but you're awake, you're better than where you were previously, where you were just stuck in bed and you were struggling to get up. Now you're awake, now you make a cup of tea, now you watch series, now you do other things, someone will contact you, and already you're in a better space. So that's the one positive aspect of having a dog, especially if you train them. Another thing is that because dogs need to be walked, Chandler is a high energy dog. He needs to be walked, and I'm looking at him outside. He needs to be walked, and so walking is obviously good for your mental health, being outside in nature. And so when I take a walk or when I exercise, I feel a lot better anyway, regardless of what it is that I'm experiencing. Even if I'm not feeling too well, I'll have to take him for a walk. And it doesn't always have to be a long walk, but just a kilometer helps. It's enough to keep the dog I don't know. How do you take care of a dog? Okay, the walk is good for the dog, and it's also good for you. So that's the other benefit of having a dog. However, you have to train the dog. And besides the house training and relieving himself in the house, because I did very well with Chandler on that, but just having the dog to be a disciplined dog. I struggled at some point with Chandler in the puppy phases where he just wouldn't obey me, and he was also trying to dominate me. At the end of the day, I had to be reminded by the vet that this is an animal. Yes, it might be a very empathetic and intuitive animal and very emotionally intelligent, but it's still an animal, and it needs discipline and it needs structure. And I learned that it's not healthy to infantize the pet if you're not going to also be strict when it comes to disciplining them. So I would also add that to the cost as well, that you need to include going for classes with the dog, so that you know that when it's running off and when you call it, it needs to come back immediately. It needs to respect you. So that's the thing. And also, beating a dog is not a solution, guys. I know in some communities it's like acceptable to beat dogs. No, you shouldn't beat the dog. Like, that's why puppy classes or dog classes are very helpful for that. So with all of this, keeping all of this in mind, if you would like a dog and you like the idea of a dog, but you're not ready to make the commitment of a dog, I think it helps to go to there are these services where you can almost like hire a dog for the day, where you take it on walks and you spend time with it. I have a cousin who also temporarily adopted a dog while it was waiting for its forever home, and that's another way to sort of have the experience of a dog without actually making the full on commitment. So if you're considering a dog but you're not sure, I would advise that you initially explore those options. See what it is like to have a dog in your space, or spend time with dogs and see if it will help you. The thing is, they are cute, so you might lean towards having the dog, but just be aware of the costs that are involved with having a dog, and the breed as well. You need to know, is the breed going to do what it is that you need it for? For example, if you want a very alert dog, if you're in an area that's not very safe, Jack Russells are known to be very alert. They're tiny, but they're very alert, and they do well when they are paired with a bigger dog who's like the muscle, for example, if you're thinking of security. Then for a home or a dog that is a part of the family, golden retrievers are amazing for that because they're generally calmer and they are good with children, for example. Chandler's breed, on the other hand, is very feisty. I think he thinks he's a lion. He thinks he's a big dog. He is not. He's not scared of anything, and he will generally like attack another dog if it's necessary. However, he is very protective. So I don't know if it's a breed thing or it's just the way Chandler is, but he is very protective. So if we are taking walks and then someone suddenly tries to approach me or suddenly tries to come towards me that he doesn't know, he gets very aggressive and he will bite. He has bitten people in those situations. And because he's tiny and fluffy, people underestimate him, but he's bitten people and he's drawn blood. And in a way, I'm not saying I'll put my life in Chandler's hands, but it does help. It does help with the fact that he is going to deter unwanted attention, especially when I'm taking a walk outside. So that's another thing to consider if you'd like that. Yeah, so that's why I got a dog. And I have lots of friends who have dogs. I also grew up with dogs, but growing up, we had dogs at home, but my dad was mostly responsible for the dogs, and we had mastiffs, bull mastiffs. I'll put a picture of that breed, and we had 2 of them. At some point, I think we even had 5 dogs. So I've always been generally comfortable around dogs, so it wasn't a hard decision. I don't know if the experience is the same for cats. I don't know about cats. I'm scared of cats. Chanta also is scared of cats. If he sees a cat, he'll chase it. So yeah, but I think those are things to consider. So if you are thinking of getting a pet, if you are thinking of getting a dog specifically, find out about the breed, understand why you're getting the breed or the dog, what it is that you'd like the dog to do, and then get a dog with a personality or traits that are more suited to that. So yeah, that's just my dog talk, but it doesn't take away from the mental health conversation. Having a dog has definitely had a positive effect on my mental health, because when I come home, he's always so happy to see me. He's just always happy. He doesn't care what type of day I've had. There's no judgment, though he does give me side eyes. I'll put a picture here. But they're generally just always loving and always accepting, and so it has had a positive effect on me. And as we grow as a consciousness and as a society and as people in the world, I think we need to become more comfortable or more open to having these conversations about mental health and supporting each other in the different ways that we can make our mental and emotional health better. A few weeks ago, I traveled. It was a short lift. I did travel, and I drove. Actually, it was like a 2-hour drive from where I live, and I was on a horse farm. And the lady who was there was so amazing. She actually then explained to me that they have horse therapy. I know it sounds weird, but they have horse therapy, and basically it's the same thing that a dog does, but horses are a lot more intuitive. The way that she described it, that horses will mirror whatever is going on with the person who's needing therapy, whether it's a troubled teen or adults or whatever, and how it's a bit of a spiritual experience, if I can put it that way. And so, in as much as we explore the world around us, that the universe or that God has given us, let us be open to supporting people in their different mental health or emotional health journeys, and let's allow space for those closest to us to feel safe to explore whatever it is without judgment, without being punished for that, without being laughed at. And a few people that find out I have a dog, they like to make jokes about it, and yeah, Chandra, da 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 da, yeah, it's funny. But at the same time, I have now learned that I don't have to explain myself to everyone. I don't want to be going around telling everyone my life story. But I think let's just be a bit more mindful when people are having these moments of sharing parts of themselves that are very hard to share. Let us just be a bit more kind with other people and with ourselves, especially, because you can't be kind to the next person if you've never experienced it for yourself, and if you don't treat yourself with kindness, if you don't speak to yourself with kindness. So I've said a lot. I think I'll call it a day when it comes to that. But yeah, I hope that helped. I know I started off with the mental health thing, but this was actually supposed to be about the dog. And I thought it would be a lot more funny, but I guess when I was actually going through it, I realized actually it's a serious thing. And people get dogs for different reasons. Not everyone gets dogs for their mental health, etc. But I think let's just be mindful of the people around us. Anyway, if you liked this chat, please hit the like button wherever it is on your screen, and subscribe, leave a comment, and yeah, I'd like to hear from you.